So
had administration been fair,
Yeah.
had administration done its duty,
Yeah.
there would have been no problem, no need for this bill.
Okay.
IPC statute would have been sufficient.
Sure.
No, but-
One minute, gentlemen, interjections later. We come to a broader point on is another law, is it the answer? Aryaman Sundaram, your introductory comments.
Arnab, the fact is that this is a controversial bill. It is a draconian bill. But the question really which puzzles me is, what motivated this bill? I think we have to understand that. You see, all the offences referred to here are already offences. They already exist in the Indian Penal Code, otherwise incitement to violence, incitement to religious hatred, all
Yes.
these already exist. There are already punishments for all this. There are already legal proceedings which can be instituted for all this. What was the requirement of a special enactment to consolidate all this and make a special enactment, while at the same time I find there is a section in this bill which specifically says that it's not in dereliction of the Indian Penal Code but is in addition to it? The answer to me appears to be this. There is a very popular feeling that a fundamental minority is not a social menace, but a fundamental majority can have very far-reaching effects.
Okay.
And that appears to be the fundamental purpose behind this bill. That is, that a majority, if not controlled, can create havoc, whereas a minority, if not specifically controlled, because of the very fact it's a minority, the range of its havoc is more limited. And that appears to me to be the only possible reason I can see as to why we have to have this special enactment, which is so controversial in so many terms and has so many loopholes, I'm sorry to say, that it is going to create a very frightening situation. We talked about constitutionality. It really surprises me. What are we talking about? That there can be a reasonable classification? Yes. What does reasonable classification mean? That Mr. X can be protected, but Mr. Y need not be protected. We talked about Article 29, Article 30, which says we can have special laws for religious and linguistic minorities. Now let us understand this. This is not a law for religious and linguistic minorities. It is not a law which gives a religious and linguistic minority a special right. On the contrary, it is not a law which supports through giving any concessions to a religious or linguistic minority, but it is a law which hits against a majority. And that is the purpose. If you look at the whole act, the act,
So why? Give me one reason so I get a rebut.
Who is the target of this act?
The group.
The target of the act, the group is the recipient of the violence. But who is the target which this act is targeted to? It is to punish the persons who commit certain actions. It is therefore not an act giving special privileges to any particular group. It is an act which provides for special punishments.
Here's the argument Mr. N.C. Saxena just put. Yeah. You see, he says, and Mr. Mandar also says, I'm coming to you for interject. He says the social reality that communal violence is against the minority community. And therefore, he took the example of the domestic violence bill, where he says only wives are covered. It's a social fact that husbands have also been beaten up by wives, but they're not covered. Similarly, he says in the case of a minority community, if it indulges in violence against the majority community, it will be under the CRPC and the IPC, and not under this bill.
Sorry, Arnab, let me make it very clear. The points taken was that Article 29 and Article 30 would cover this. According to me, no. Because Article 29, Article 30 is really to give special privileges to religious and linguistic minorities. Whereas what this act does...
Nowhere we are talking about Article 29, 30 here. Nobody is talking about Article 29, 30 here. No. Nobody... Saxena sir, are we talking anywhere in 29? No, we are not talking about 29, 30.
Are you ceding ground for the sixth...
Can I take
one more interjection? A quick moment before I come to interjection.
Yes. Yeah. So what I wanted to really point out was that when you're going to have such a draconian act, by all means, I understand the purpose of it, but the purpose of it cannot lose sight of the fact that we lose faith in the majority. The whole act, if you see the tenor of the act, even see the authority which has been created, we talk about an authority of 7 members, of whom 4 should be from the minority.
community.
I ask myself, what is the minority
No,
you're
sir, there is
referring
no
to?
minority. And I think
Let me finish this.
You want to hear Mr. Farooqi?
Let me ask
No,
one question.
it's
Sorry,
too much.
let me just
Sorry,
ask
you complete
one
quickly, sir.
question.
Complete quickly.
Let me ask one question. When you refer to the authority and say there should be 4 members who should belong to a group as defined under the Act, the authority is central, it is not statewide. How do you arrive at
No,
this?
even it is the state-wise, sir. Let me.
The national
What's
authority.
Mr. Sundaram, we'll come for interjections in 2 minutes. Your point of view.
Yeah, Arnab, I'm very happy, number one, that my brother Sheshadri's point of view has been totally rejected by everybody, that it is not against the Hindus. When we are talking about this, group is very well defined.
who rejected
Listen, sir, group is very well defined.
Let him complete.
You are saying it is against 85%, it is absolutely wrong, because it very clearly talks about the group, and when we are talking about the groups, we are not only talking about the religious minority, we are talking about the linguistic minority, we are talking about the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, and this religious minority could be anybody, but it could be when it is the Tamils in the Karnataka or the Biharis in the Maharashtra. Need not be Muslims or Christians, they have to be from the majority community also. So Hindu-Muslim divide, absolutely wrong, it is not correct, number one. Number two, when we are talking about the group, we are very clear about which group we are talking about. Number three, we are talking about the dominant and non-dominant. Why non-dominant? Because it is the time it has been proved endlessly. The recent, I would not like to go into, because my both right and left, they will jump on me.
No, please do. You are free to. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
We have seen just now, just last week, we have seen how the non-dominant group has been victimized, how the records have been fired, all those things have been done.
Let him complete.
Let me give the time.
The records have not been destroyed.
I was not talking to you, sir. Please give me the time. You have got all the time in the world.
Let him complete.
You have got all the time in the world. But I'm just trying to tell you that, sir, this is what actually is the problem. It is all the commission reports, all the other reports have very clearly said that there has been a delinquent duty, there has been a bias. Fortunately, we have got 2-3 people who have served as the civil servant.
Yes.
So we know, and not only these 2-3 people, but we have got n number of the reports. So number one, please understand that this bill is a requirement to avoid any kind of communal flare-up or the targeted violence against anybody. We are forgetting one thing, that it is not the communal bill only. The heading also said prevention of communal and targeted violence. When we are talking about targeted violence, sir, Sundaram Sahab, it could be against Hindus, it could be against...
Of course, I agree with you completely.
So where is...
You are right.
No, it is
you are
not
right.
against... So my submission would be that this bill has to be taken in view of the history of 60 years of the communal flare-ups, targeted groups, we have to take into account.
We're coming to interjections. We're coming to interjections. Let me just introduce this part, so to set some rules in. We are going to give enough time for everyone to interject. I request you, if Mr. Rudy, you want to have the first interjection, who's your interjection to, so that on the other side you have an opportunity to see everyone's point of view. I want one particular person. This panel is divided down the middle, 3 and 3. Who do you want to respond to your interjection? Please go ahead, Mr. Rudy. Interjection 1.
Issue. You see, when Mr. Farooqi was speaking, or even when Mr. Saxena was speaking, or Mr. Mandir was speaking, they have talked about the riots in the country with specific examples saying that they have witnessed A, B, C, and D. You, in your emotional outburst, have expressed the exact intent of the bill, because, pardon me for saying that, you came back to an example saying that this is particular incident which has prompted an overall action. You gave that example. So the bias is visible in the thought process of the people who drafted that bill, which cannot be denied. We heard that, and we heard it openly on this stage. Now, having said that, when you talk about, Mr. Saxena talks about reasonable classification. Okay. What is this? When earlier you had put something like, now you talk about regional classification. Then you had talked about environmental hostility. Then you had put in a word called the secular fabric of India. Why are you? And now gradually, every time when people are splitting you out, you are withdrawing definitions. Why did you withdraw the secular definition? Why did you withdraw that state definition? Why are you saying a vague term in legal terms, calling yourself reasonable
So what's your
classification.
specific
My only thing
intervention
is,
and who
you
to
see,
whom?
the intent of this bill, if anyone, and we have got reasons, clause by clause. Now, this whole expression can be very well explained when we start talking clause by clause. What is the intent and who are the target groups? As what Mr. Sundaram has said, this is a complete alienation of a particular community.
No,
in
specify-
terms of a definition, saying the definition of the group in itself per se is faulty. It is intended to victimize the majority. It is there.
No,
and it
but
is
majority
obvious.
as a majority defined in which way? There are 4 ways. There's scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, linguistic, and religious. You're focusing on the religious.
No,
divide.
Arnav, it's
apart
not only
from,
one
apart
thing.
from that, for example,
Rebut.
religious group also says includes scheduled caste and scheduled
Okay,
tribes.
respond.
Under an offence against a scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, which is already being
Right.
tried, this would be an additional offence under the communal violence bill. How can you have such
Mr.
laws when
Mandar,
you are
please respond.
doubling the offences of
Mr.
individuals?
Mandar will take your interjection.
Mixing up 2 or more offences. What is the intent?
Mr.
Why
Mandar.
are you dragging in more
I think he got the
offence
point.
under a particular
I think he
point?
got the point.
Actually, there have been a lot of points. I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
This is not to score debating points. I really want to plead that we understand what the purpose of this bill is. The purpose of the bill was not as you had suggested in my understanding.
No,
the purpose
please, just a second. Purpose of the bill, was it what Mr. Faruqi was saying?
I'll tell you.
Please clarify that.
I'll tell you.
Purpose of the bill,
who is
what
the
was
bill-
Mr. Saxena and Faruqi saying?
No,
Was it the purpose?
because-
If you can define that, we can go further.
because since
He
Mr.
said- he
Faruqi-
said
No, I will
specifically,
definitely- listen,
Mr.
listen,
Faruqi,
listen.
If you are referring-
I
I
want to hear from Mr. Mandar whether that
why
was the
why
purpose of
Mr.
that
Mandar?
bill.
I will be the one.
I will
No, you must confirm because you are part of that bill.
Arnab,
Even Mr.
I've got a
Saxena's
question
statement,
I
you have
want
to say-
answered.
You have to answer that.
Can I
I'll
Yes,
come.
please. Yes, please.
Let him
Just give me-
respond, sir. to
Just
your-
give me 2 or 3 minutes,
Yes,
and
please.
I'll just try to explain so that we. The purpose of this bill is only one, and the offences are the same for Hindus and Muslims, for this religious minority, that for SCs and others. Please be clear. The offences are the same. The punishments are the same. Then what is different? Who is the target of the bill? The target of the bill is public officials who fail, who have dereliction of duty and have consistently not protected vulnerable people in this community, in this country, against mass violence. So they are the target of the bill. What is new? Why did we need this new act? Because repeatedly we have observed that public officials have failed to fulfill the duty for which, when we talked about the steel frame, the expectation was that these people would stand up when people incite caste and communal and linguistic and other hatred. They have not done it, and they have to be held accountable. There's also the notion of command responsibility, which is really important, where it is not just the junior-most person there, but wherever the command lies, who is responsible for acts both of omission and commission. For not acting is perhaps the biggest crime. And the other purpose of the bill, and just to lay it out, is also to establish national standards of relief and rehabilitation, which do not exist, which apply to every person who is affected.
Okay.
These are the purposes of the bill.
Here's a Aryaman Sundaram wanted an interjection and a
Yeah.
question. Who do you want to answer your question?
I would like to ask this question to either Mr. Saxena, Mr. Mandar, or Mr. Faruqi, whoever would answer
Mr.
it.
Saxena
I have
takes that.
three
Yes.
questions.
Right.
Number one, I understood, and please clarify this because I think even I am confused by this. You have said that it is anyone who is a minority in any state or otherwise. Do I take it therefore that a member of the group would be a Brahmin in Tamil Nadu, who's probably 3% of the population of Tamil Nadu? Because we are saying here it is not one moment. It is not religion wise. We have even said within linguistic, within religious groups, within the religious groups itself. So this is my first question.
Let him answer
I
that.
think
Let
this
him answer that one
clarification
by
is
one.
required.
So we have a flow.
No.
Yes.
Brahmins will not be in a minority because minority has been defined only on the basis of religion and language. So therefore, caste is not a consideration here,
Except scheduled castes.
except scheduled castes and
Right.
scheduled tribes.
So in which case, if it's inter se, as was said earlier by Mr. Chari, as between a Shia and a Sunni, you say that will not be covered.
That would
No,
be covered
that-
under the IPC.
That strangely,
Why are you saying
that's
why on
strange.
this
Why
act?
then
In
what
a
is the
very
purpose of
strange
the
I'm
manner.
on this act.
Then
I
what
want
is
to
the purpose of
understand the
this bill?
purpose of
Mr.
it.
Saxena, in a very strange manner, what you are actually doing is you have created two communities, Hindu and Muslim. You have brought all the 85% of Hindus in this country, irrespective of whether he is a Brahmin or a Vaishnava or a Shaiva I mean, there are. I mean,
You could be a minority despite anything within your
like
own
Muslim
social
in
and
this
cultural
country
basis.
is not monolithic.
Mr.
The
Seshadri,
characteristic
what
of
are Dalits-
Hindu.
are Dalits
the
not Hindu?
characteristic
Are
of-
Dalits
I'll come
not
to that.
Hindu?
I'll come
Are
to
Dalits
that.
not Hindu?
I
And then
would
linguistic.
like to
And
point
then
out, Mr.
linguistic.
Saxena.
You're right.
You mentioned about Kandhamal. The Kandhamal problem was essentially between the Christian tribals, those tribals who had converted themselves into Christianity, and those tribals who still belong to Hinduism. The Kandhamal trouble was between two tribal groups. So does it come under communal violence, or it comes under linguistic problem,
Well, under-
or it comes under SC/ST group?
Mr.
Kandhamal-
Saxena, reply. Point
Kandhamal
two.
would
Ms.
be
Bin, let him reply. Let him
Number
reply.
two,
Let
no,
him
no,
reply.
I'll
Let him reply.
continue. Another example that you gave was about Godhra. Don't forget.
Godhra
that-
did not.
Godhra, you never know.
I think
Arnab, I had
Harsh
two
Mandal
minutes.
was-
talked about what we
I
talked
had
about,
a
but it was
question
understood.
I needed to ask.
It was
Reference
understood.
was made.
Understood.
Among many others, I spoke
Basically-
about 84 riots, I
basically-
spoke about Gujarat, I spoke about
Basically,
Kerala.
all these rights, we should go into the genesis of these rights, and if you go into the genesis of these rights, everywhere there has been an ego clash between two individuals, which has then spawned on to a larger problem.